Hi guys, welcome back to Java Full Stack Made Easy session 65. In this session, we will talk about REST API, JSON Server and Postman. And we will explore these things first, and in our next session, we will integrate a REST API with Angular applications. So let us first understand what exactly is a REST API and how are we going to in integrate that into Angular. So first, let's just understand what exactly a REST API is and what is the need of REST API. So first of all, REST API means representational state transfer. REST API. API means what? Application programming interface. Fine. So now what is this representational state transfer? Let us understand this in very simple terminology with an example so that you appreciate the use of a REST API. Fine. Let us consider an example where you visit a restaurant and you want to have some food, right? So when you go to a restaurant and want to have some food, you order the food, right? So when you're ordering the food is actually prepared in the kitchen. Now the food is prepared, that means actual food is present in kitchen and you, the user, wants to consume it, right? So let us consider that example. So you are the consumer, you are the client, okay? And there is the kitchen. There's the kitchen, sorry, where the food is prepared. Now the food is prepared, or you can say the ingredients and everything is stored at the kitchen itself, right? So and the food is also prepared there, but you as a client, you're hungry here and you want to consume that, right? So do you, like, when you go to a restaurant, do you go to the kitchen and then you prepare the food and bring it to your table? No, right? So there is an intermediator between you and that kitchen, that is the waiter, right? So the waiter is acting like a server, right? Between you and the kitchen. So it is an intermediator. So waiter, what waiter does? Waiter uh, takes the order and serves you the food, right? Serves the food. So that's what a waiter is doing. So in this example, if you want to understand REST API, with this example, with a very simple example, you can exactly understand what a REST API is doing. So this kitchen where all the ingredients are stored and the food is prepared, this will be considered as a database, right? And you, the client, will be considered as the front end. Fine. And this waiter will be considered as a REST API. So I hope that with this example you have understood that a REST API is serving you, right? REST API is actually serving you the food. So the front end, if the front end wants any data, the data is actually stored in the database. So REST API brings that data to the front end. That means REST API, it is acting like an intermediator between the front end and the back end, right? So that's what a REST API does. Fine. Now, one more thing I would like to tell you, why would we need a REST API? So this front end, see, the front end can be a mobile app, right? It can be a mobile app, it can be a web application, or it can be even a smart TV or anything. It can be anything, or it can even be any other API. It can be any other REST API. So REST API, the advantage of using REST API is that REST API does not care about who is talking to it. REST API does not care about who is talking to it, whether it is a web application or a mobile application or any other API. You order to the REST API, you request the REST API that I want so and so things. The REST API goes and brings that, right? Like a waiter does not care who the waiter is serving to, right? He can serve to male candidates, female candidates, kids, or the senior citizens, anybody. So waiter does not care whom he is serving, right? Serving the food. So similarly here REST API does not care whether the front end is mobile application or a web application or a REST API altogether. So it does not care, right? So that's another similarity between your waiter and the REST API. Now in the front end we are creating Angular applications, right? So our Angular applications are now wants to communicate with the databases. That means Angular application needs the data from the database. So Angular language is completely different. The front end is a completely different world altogether, and the database is a different world altogether, right? So these are two different worlds, and they cannot directly communicate with each other, so because they don't have a common language between them, they talk in completely different languages. So REST API here acts like that common language, right? So I hope that with this example you have understood a REST API is an intermediator between your front end and the back end, and REST API is platform neutral. That means it is platform independent. How do we say that REST API is platform independent? That's because REST API does not care about what type of application it is talking to. Okay, the same REST application can serve to a mobile app or a web app or an API or any other smart device. Like for example, if you take an example of Netflix, right? So we have a Netflix web application, we have Netflix mobile application, and we have Netflix smart TV app, right? So your the same REST API is capable of powering all these three, because REST API does not care what the front end is all about, right? So that's how our REST API works, and that's the advantage of using a REST API. Now, as a customer in a restaurant, what you have done is you are ordering to the waiter, and the waiter is serving you the food. Similarly, when you order on to a REST API, what you can do is, suppose for example you are ordering a mango juice, and the waiter says sure. Here the waiter goes to the kitchen, and then the mango juice is prepared here at the kitchen, and then the waiter brings back and says that sure, here is your uh, mango juice, right? Similarly, what you can do is you can add new flavors to your juice, right? So in REST API also you can add new flavors. That means there are few requests that are made to a REST API. So what is that? You can tell REST API to add some new details, or you can tell your REST API to go fetch the data. Okay, or you can tell your REST API to add new data, or what you can tell your REST API is that update the existing data. Fine. Similarly, you can tell your REST API to delete the data. So these are some of the commonly used functionality with a REST API, right? So these are the common requests that you make to a REST API. In REST terminology, we call this fetching as get, and the storage as post, and update as put, and then delete as delete itself. So these four things you have to remember: get, post, put, and delete. Whenever you are dealing with the REST API, you should always remember these four things, that is get, post, put, and delete. And when the REST API is communicating with any of the front end, it communicates with two things, that is the URL and the uh, data, that means the JSON response. Fine. So you provide a URL to the REST API with the method, whether you want a get request or a post request or a put request or a delete request. Upon that, your REST API will serve you the response, and that will be in terms of JSON, because that's the common language the REST API understands. So REST API's language is JSON. Fine. So I hope that now you have understood and appreciated the use of REST API, and what are the advantages of using REST API. That means in modern day programming, how REST API works, or what is the advantage that REST API brings into us. We have understood that the in a world, our applications, the front end and the back end, needs to communicate constantly with each other. It can be your mobile app or a website or a smartwatch or a smart TV or anything. So they want to communicate with each other. So all that is done through one intermediator, that is the REST API. So if you have like multiple applications at the front end and wants to communicate with the database, so you can make use of a REST API, because REST API does not care with whom it is talking to. So it can connect to everything, and also it is platform independent. It does not care about these things, and it is also technology neutral. Now what do we mean by technology neutral? So your front end can talk to the back end applications irrespective of what language this REST API is built on. That means REST API can be built by using Java, it can be built by using Python, or it can be built by using any other application of your choice. That means it can even be a simple Node.js for your REST API. So now your Angular applications or this mobile apps or and other APIs, like if a Python REST API wants to communicate with the Java REST API, it's all fine. It does not care about that, right? So irrespective, when you are using Angular at the front end, your backend, that means your REST API, basically can be either created in Java, or it could have been created in Python, or it could have been created in Node.js. So REST API, your front end is completely independent of the REST API. So that is the advantage of making use of the REST API, and it also separates the UI, that is your front end, with the backend. So since the front end and the backend is separated, the complexity of your application is reduced, right? So you can focus, the front end developers can completely focus only on the front end part, the backend developers can focus on the backend part. So in such cases, the security also comes up into picture, and it will be easy for us to manage the application when they are separated. Fine. So these are some of the advantages of REST API, and since I told you that this REST API can be created either by using Java, Python, or Node.js, so as of now we don't have any REST API. So I'll tell you one more thing that we have already discussed while at the beginning of our sessions, right? So during in my first session of Java Full Stack Made Easy, I told you that you are going to learn full stack, and in full stack we will be learning things like HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript, and Angular. So as for now, we are done with almost all these technologies except Angular. So just a few things in Angular are left, and at the middle layer, the business layer, I told you that we will be working on Java and Spring Boot, or you can call it as a Spring framework. And at the back end, the database side, so it can either be SQL type of databases, or it can be no SQL type of databases, right? So we know that our REST API is independent. REST API can communicate with the SQL type of database. Also, it can communicate with the NoSQL type of database. So using Spring Boot, we are going to create our REST APIs. Fine. So we want our front end. So this is our UI, that is the front end wants to communicate with the back end, that is the database, right? Now, when the front end wants to communicate with the database, we need a REST API. So front end, the Angular applications will communicate with the REST API, and the REST API will communicate with either of these. Either it can communicate with the SQL type of database or NoSQL type of databases, and then whatever data is retrieved, it can give it back to Angular. So this is how it works. So now in this case, like as of now, we don't know how do we build a REST API, right? We have not learned that yet. But in Angular again, as I told you, it is independent. It does not care uh, the REST API is created by using Spring Boot, or it is created by using Python, or it is created by using any other XYZ technology, right? So here what we will do is that we will create, since we don't have any REST API, we will mimic the REST API. So we are going to create a fake REST API. So how do we do that? How do we create a fake REST API? So there is a tool called as the JSON server that creates a fake REST API. So tool for fake REST API is going to be JSON. Fine. So we will be using a JSON server to create a fake REST API. And the next thing is that we need to test the API before we integrate, right? So before we integrate that API into Angular, we want to test whether the API is working or not. So test the API using a application called as Postman. Fine. So that's what the topic of today said. We will be talking about what REST API is, what JSON server is, what Postman is. A REST API is an intermediator between your front end and your backend application, right? And then the second thing, JSON server is a tool that builds a fake REST API because we don't have a actual REST API built yet. Then the third thing is that we want to test the API whether it is created properly or not. So we will be using a Postman, right? So let's go ahead and now set up the JSON server. Fine. So to set up JSON server, first of all, what I will do is I will go back to my Angular demos repository, and here I will create a new Angular project. Okay. So let's open a terminal here and create a new Angular project and also set up the JSON server. So I will create a new Angular project here, and we already know that to create an Angular project we use ng new, the project name, let's call it as http demo. So this is going to be an Angular http where Angular communicates with the REST API, but still I'm just creating an Angular project. I'm not yet communicating. So in my next session I'll create an application that actually communicates with it. Fine. So what I'll do as of now is let's just cancel that. That's because I just created it normally. I actually wanted to create it as ng new http demo, and it should be hyphen hyphen no stand alone, right? So because this version of Angular creates a standalone application, and I don't want standalone components to be created. Server side rendering, I don't want it, and zoneless, yes, and that's it. Fine. So let it create a Angular app. In our next application we will be using this Angular app. And then what I'm gonna do is I will now set up the JSON server. So how do we set up a JSON server? That means how do we install a JSON server so that we can create a fake REST API. So to install JSON server, it is very easy. How do we do that? So we can simply go for the node package manager npm and then go for an install. Npm install -g indicates it's a global installation, and then what we want a JSON server to be installed. So npm install -g JSON server. So why are we using this JSON server? That's because we want to build a fake REST API so that REST API communicates with our Angular application. Fine. So now you can see that 45 packages in 11 seconds. So 45 packages are actually added for your JSON server. Now since the JSON server is already installed, I want to uh, run this JSON server. That means I want to start this JSON server. So how do we start a JSON server? What this JSON server is, let's go back again. The JSON server is just a REST API. That REST API communicates with the database. So do we have a database yet? No, we don't have a database either. So since we don't have a database, our fake REST API should be communicating with a fake database, right? So we will be working with a db.json file. It can be a db.json, it can be an xyz.json, it can be a students.json, it can be a car.json, it can be any file name depending upon what data you have in your database. So as of now, I'm just creating it as a database.json for our better understanding. In my future tutorials, I'll be creating a db.json with a different name altogether. Fine. So we need a db.json, right? So how do we get this db.json? So initially we are going to create a simple db.json and that we will add up into our application that I have just now created here, http demos. Fine. So how will I get that? So for a better understanding, that means to make life easy for you, what I have already done is I have created this db.json. So let's go to Java Full Stack Made Easy Angular, and here I have created a repository day65. In day65 I have already given the setup. How do we set up a fake REST API with JSON server, and also here we have a db.json file. So you can simply go and get this db.json file. Fine. So we can download it. You can see that we can download it here. So once this db.json file is downloaded, what you simply do is copy that and put it into the repository, put it into the new Angular folder that you have created, a db.json. That's it. You download and you store it into the Angular project where you want that. Fine. Now the next thing is I'll go to this Angular project. Now I have to do cd and then http demos I have to go to. There we go. And in http demos I've already copied the db.json. So now I have to start the JSON server. So to start the JSON server, there is another command, JSON hyphen server hyphen watch, and the file name db.json is the file which the JSON server has to look for. So now you can see that I have started the JSON server, and the JSON server is started on localhost 3000/cars. Why is it started on localhost 3000 cars? So let us understand that as well. So what I will do is in my Visual Studio I will start that. Okay, let's open this folder. I think that is already opened here. Yes, http demos is something that's opened here. So db.json. So if you look at that db.json that which I have given you here in the repository, you see that there are two cars I have already created, and those two cars are present here, right? So that is why see this here main object that stores the array, the main key is cars. That's why it is created it as cars. So if you have something else in your db.json, it will be created on that. That means if it is students array, it will be created as students. If it is any other array like products or items or maybe post or anything, so it will be created according to that. Fine. So now that my JSON server is up and running, that means my REST API is up and running. So it's time to test our REST API whether it is working fine or not. So if you remember here, so to test our REST API we need a Postman. So here what you can do is you can download and install Postman. Since I have already downloaded and installed Postman, I'll be opening that. So once you have this Postman, you can test your REST API, and your REST API, when you're testing it, your REST API knows what get request, post, put and delete request. And what is the URL on our REST API is working? So you can see that URL here, that is localhost 3000/cars. It can be anything depending upon the array that you have created. So as of now it is cars. So what I will do is I'll open my Postman, and I'll take this method as get here, and then what am I gonna do is I'll just hit this URL 3000/cars, right? So let's hit send, and you can see that these two cars are retrieved to me now, right? Similarly, if I want to add a new car into it, so you can see that it is a post request that does that. So to fetch the details we use a get method, and to add new data into it we use a post request. So what you can do is you can simply go to post request, make a request on http localhost 3000/cars. You type this URL, go to the body and select raw data here, and then select JSON here. And after that you get this object. What you can do is you can copy that object from here also, right? Whatever object I have already given, you can copy that object, or you can create a JSON object on your own if it is not matching this. So I have that object here, and the IDs are unique, so 1 2 is already stored, so I'll be storing 3 here. And let's give a car name. So I will give it as let me first check what two cars I have. I have Etios and Liva, so I'll give Swift, and the maker as Maruti, and the color let it be white as for now. So the third car I'm trying to insert post request, I'm trying to add new data, so I'll send. So the third data is added. You can see that the third data will be added in your db.json file here, which is kind of a database for us, right? So let us now make a request, the get request, and check whether we will be able to get the third car or not. So I'll click send once again, and you can notice that the third car is also retrieved. So this way we can test our REST API that whether it is giving us the request or not. Fine. Similarly, what we can also do is the REST API, the fake REST API that we have created, it is created in such a way that it even allows you to do things like this. That is, I can search the car based on the ID. So here is the get request. I'll hit the URL, and I will hit /1. That means search me the car whose ID is 1. So when I hit send, you can see that the car with ID 1 is retrieved. It is kind of get by ID. They can type in any ID. Depending upon that, it is going to give you the result. So result 200 OK indicates that you got the result. Similarly, now what I will do is I'll try to search for car 4 which is not present, right? So if it is not present, it is going to give you a 404 error. Fine. So for that indicates the car is not present. So if you just hit cars, it will give you all the cars that are available. Similarly, you can search for the car based on the color, based on the maker, or based on the name as well. Simply you have to put a question mark there, and whatever property name, if you want to search it based on the maker, so I can type in maker and then equals to, I can say Toyota. So when I want to search it based on the maker, so I have two cars which are created by Toyota, so I get that. Similarly, what we can also do is we can search it based on the color as well. Okay, color, yeah, equal to white. So all the white cars will be retrieved to us. So you can see that I get the white car. Similarly, if I want to search for a black car, we get that. If it is not there, obviously we will get a 404 error. That is that the details are not found. Fine. So that way we can make a request to REST API. So in this case, we have made a GET request and a PUSH request. So as the time progresses, I'll show you how do we make a PUT request. PUT request is kind of it's a POST request itself. So what we can simply do is, instead of making a POST request, we can change it to PUT request. So let me show you that. So I'll copy this once again. So this is the URL on which I'm working, and then there should be a PUT request. A PUT request is kind of update, and in update we don't know what we are trying to update, right? So we have to select raw and JSON here, and I want to update something, right? So whenever we want to update something, at that time we should know like what property needs to be updated and what exactly is the object that we are trying to update, right? So let us try to update maybe a car that is Maruti or something. Fine. So we will update that and see whether the properties are updated or not. A PUT request is something that I want to make. So for a PUT request, again we need a request body. So I'll go to the post request here. I will copy this and I'll go to the PUT request, and here I'm gonna change something. That means for ID 3 it was Maruti and the maker was Maruti and the car name was Swift. Okay, let's change this to Ritz. Okay, so I'm just changing the name of the car, and also I want to change the color of that car. So I want to make it red. So in PUT request we make a modification, right? So I have changed two things. So let's just hit send, and yeah, first of all, this URL is not found. That's because in a PUT request I have to also tell what property I'm changing, like means what ID I'm changing. So I have to pass in the ID here. So you can see that ID 3 has now changed to Ritz, and the color is red. So let us check whether it is updated or not. It should not be a new record, it should be updated. So there should be only 3 records as of now. So I'll go to a GET request and make a GET request again. So when I make a GET request again, you can notice that ID 1, 2 and ID 3, only 3 records are there. The third record is now modified to the car name Ritz and the color red. So that way we can make a PUT request as well. So whenever we are making a PUT request, at that time we just tell that what car has to be updated, and then we have to give the updated data. Similarly, we can also make a delete request, and all of these requests will be on HTTP localhost 3000 cars itself. So now I want a delete request. So I want to delete a car, right? So whenever we want to delete a car, at that time once again we tend to give what I want to delete the car with ID 1. So I hit send. So you can see that car ID 1 is deleted and it has returned us the detail. Now let's go to our GET request once again and hit send, and ID 1 should be deleted. So that way ID 1 is deleted. So this way you can test your REST API whether it is working fine or not. So we have already tested our REST API. Now we have tested the GET request, we have tested the POST request, GET by ID, and GET by any property. So all the URLs we have tested, right? So if you go to this repository, I have added some of these steps to deal with the uh, REST API. Fine. So this is the db.json which I have added, and then setting up the fake REST API. So for setting up the fake REST API, open the terminal and install the JSON server. That's what I did here, right? So I installed a JSON server. So once you install a JSON server, what you can do is, this is the command to install a JSON server, npm install -g JSON-server. Then you can create a new Angular project, right? Once you create a new Angular project by using ng new hyphen hyphen no hyphen standalone. So if you want, I will write that also here, so that it will be easy for you. So create a new Angular project, and the command to create a new Angular project is ng new http demo hyphen hyphen no stand alone, right? Then once this is created, your Angular project is created on the same terminal. What you can do is, you do a JSON server hyphen hyphen watch db.json. It is going to give you an error that the db.json file is not provided, right? So what you can do is, you can open your Angular project in Explorer again, paste the db.json file provided. Fine. So where is it provided? It is provided here itself, in day 65 repository, provided in day 65 repo. Okay. So then what you do is, after that, copy and paste the db.json downloaded in http demo project that we just now created in the above commands. Fine. So here we created a new Angular project, and in that Angular project you have to copy and paste that db.json. After that, you do a JSON hyphen server hyphen hyphen watch db.json. So once you do that, your REST API will start on the port 3000, right? So it will be like 3000 cars. That's because in my db.json I have given a cars array. It will not always be cars, it can be anything. Then you can open the Postman, and the Postman test the get request, post request, put request, and delete request all. So what I will do is, after that, you download and install Postman, okay, to test the fake REST API created using JSON hyphen server. Okay, so open Postman and test the get request. Choose the method get and type this URL. So this should give you 2 cars. Fine. And then you test this get request once again, localhost cars color white. Also you test this get request, that is cars slash id1 or id2. So this is get by id. Let's call it as get all cars. Okay, I'll type it here below. So this is for get all cars, and this is for get car by id, and this is get cars by color. Okay, now what you can do is, after doing a get request, make a post request. Now in another Postman tab, you can do it on the same Postman tab also, but just for a better understanding, I have opened a new tab. So URL is the same, and then you have to choose the method post, the body raw you have to select, and then the type has to be JSON type, and then you provide this request body. Okay, so you can see it here once again. So whenever you are making a post request, you have to go to post, and then you have to select this method post. You have to go to raw, and then you have to select JSON data here. Fine. So after that, you paste any new data here, like ID3 Swift Maruti Black, and then you just hit a send and check the result. Check the result again by making a get request. So you should find a new car after that. So once that is done, you can also make the other request, like a put request. So if you want to make a put request, that is, a put request is for update. So the URL for the put request, I'll give you the URL. The third car is what we want to modify. This is the URL, and the request body. Okay, so the request body is this. Again, here what you have to do, you have to again select raw and JSON type of data. Whenever you are sending the request, you always select method put. Okay, and then select what, raw, sorry, select, yeah, select raw and JSON, and then the body. You provide all these things like you provided it here in the uh, post request. Okay, so here you have to select that raw, JSON, and then you have to provide in the, select the body, provide the body. So body, raw, JSON, and then provide the request body. Fine. Once you do that, once again you make a get request and check, hit send and check the result again. Hit send and check the result again by making a get request. This should be updated, a put request. And lastly, the delete request. So this is the URL for delete. It is delete by ID. No need to do anything other than the URL is this, and the method is delete. So once you do that, once again you can hit the get request and check whether that is deleted or not. So that way you can test your REST API. So in this session, we got to know what exactly is a REST API, right? So we got to know this, that is a REST API is like an intermediator between the front end application and the back end application, because the front end is a completely different world and the back end is a completely different world. So a REST API is acting as a intermediator between these two. And REST API, the common features or the requests that can be made using REST API are get, post, put, and delete. That's what we got to learn. And also we learned that in our application architecture, in the full stack development that we are talking about, our Angular application should communicate with the database. So as of now, we don't have a REST API, we don't have a database either. So to mimic a REST API, we have created a fake REST API by using a tool called as JSON Server. And then that JSON server requires a fake database, so we created a fake database by creating a db.json, and we have tested this REST API using a Postman. So in this session, what we have done is we got to know what REST API is. We mimicked the fake REST API. We tested the fake REST API. Now in our next session, we will let our Angular application communicate to this REST API using the Angular HTTP module. So this will be a very interesting thing to be done. So stay tuned for the next session where we will talk about the Angular HTTP. Hope you are understanding the concepts, and if there is any confusion, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can comment on the videos for your errors or anything. So I'll try to help you accordingly. See you in the next video. Do share and subscribe to my channel for motivating me to create more such content. Thank you.